A first-class lounge is supposed to be a world of quiet luxury, a sanctuary from the chaos of the airport. But for one passenger, that sanctuary was about to be shattered. She saw a young black girl, barely out of her teens, sitting in the exact same exclusive section. The complaint was instant, veiled in venom. "Standards are slipping. She doesn't belong here." But the passenger, blinded by her own prejudice, had no idea who she was messing with. She was about to learn that some people don't just fly first class. They own the airline. This is the story of how one racist complaint triggered the most devastating, life-altering karma imaginable. The Ascend Air. First-class lounge at JFK International Airport was less a room and more a stratosphere. It was a hushed world of muted greys, brushed bronze, and sprawling glass walls that offered a god's-eye view of the jumbo jets lining up on the tarmac. The air smelled faintly of white tea and bergamot. Here, champagne wasn't just offered, it was curated. Maya Clark sat in a secluded alcove, her back to the main thoroughfare. At 19, she moved with an unstudied grace that often made people look twice. She was wearing what she always wore for long-haul flights, a cloud-soft, charcoal-grey cashmere hoodie, matching joggers, and a pair of discreetly expensive Bottega Veneta sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in long, immaculate braids. In her lap sat a worn, leather-bound sketchbook and a set of Caran d'Ache pencils. She was completely absorbed, her pencil dancing across the page, capturing the precise angle of a winglet on the A380 she was about to board. She was flying to London to see her mother. It was a trip she'd made a dozen times, but this time was special. Her art was being featured in a Rising Stars exhibition in a small but prestigious Mayfair gallery. It was her first major showing, and she was vibrating with a quiet, nervous energy. The hiss of a champagne cork popping nearby barely registered, but the voice that followed, sharp and brittle as ice, cut right through her concentration. "Richard, look at this! Just look!" Maya didn't look up, but she could feel a presence approaching. "I pay over $20,000 for these memberships, for this exclusivity. And what do we get? It's like the public concourse in here. They're just letting anyone in now." The voice belonged to Evelyn Reed. Evelyn was a woman in her late 50s who wore her wealth like armor. She was draped in a Burberry trench coat, despite the climate-controlled air, and carried a Louis Vuitton roller bag that she handled as if it were a priceless artifact. Her hair was a helmet of blonde, sprayed solid precision. Her husband, Richard, a man who looked perpetually tired, sighed and adjusted his Rolex. "Evelyn, please, keep your voice down. We're boarding in 20 minutes. "I will not keep my voice down," Evelyn hissed, her eyes scanning the lounge and landing, with surgical precision, on Maya. Maya was the only black person in the lounge. She was also the only person under 30. To Evelyn, this combination was an irrefutable error in the social equation. Evelyn marched past Maya's alcove, heading for the white marble bar, but she made a point to stop, just for a second, and look directly at Maya's sketchbook. "Sketching? How quaint. Is that a class project?" Maya finally looked up. Her eyes, large and intelligent, met Evelyn's. She offered a small, polite, and utterly dismissive smile. Something like that. The politeness seemed to enrage Evelyn more than any argument could have. "Well," Evelyn scoffed, turning to the bar manager, Mark, "I'll have the Veuve Clicquot, and perhaps you can tell me," she said, gesturing vaguely in Maya's direction, "when the open door policy started." Mark, a consummate professional, didn't blink. "Ascend Air welcomes all its first-class passengers, madam. The Veuve?" Evelyn snatched the glass from his hand. "This used to be a premium airline. My husband and I are on our way to London for the JP Morgan Global Investment Summit. We expect a certain caliber of service and clientele. This is—" She trailed off, taking a loud, performative sip. Maya put her headphones on, heavy, black Bose noise cancellers, and returned to her sketch. She clicked her pen, shutting out the world. She'd dealt with Evelyn's all her life. The best defense was a profound, unbothered silence. But Evelyn wasn't done. As she and Richard walked back to their seats, she stumbled. Her champagne flute tipped, splashing a few golden drops onto the floor near Maya's Bottega Veneta sneakers. "Oh, goodness!" Evelyn cried with all the sincerity of a crocodile. "These floors are so terribly slippery. You really should watch your things." Maya slowly, deliberately, took off her headphones. She looked at the drops of champagne, then up at Evelyn's smug face. She didn't move to clean it. She simply stared, her silence a question mark that hung in the air. Richard, mortified, grabbed his wife's arm. "Evelyn, that's enough. We're leaving." He pulled out a handkerchief and dabbed at the floor himself, apologizing profusely. "So sorry. So sorry." Evelyn allowed herself to be pulled away, but not before firing one last shot. "Honestly, Richard, some people have no gratitude, given a golden ticket, and they can't even be bothered to say thank you when you apologize." The boarding announcement for Ascend Air Flight Les 01 to London. Heathrow chimed, a soft melodic sound that broke the tension. "We are now pleased to invite our first-class passengers to begin boarding." Maya closed her sketchbook. She stood, slinging her Loro Piana leather backpack over one shoulder. She was one of the first to the gate, her boarding pass scanned with a quiet beep. She walked down the plushly carpeted jet bridge, eager to be in her suite, in the air, away from it all. She found Suite 2A, a self-contained pod with a high-backed leather chair, a personal minibar, and a door that slid shut for privacy. She settled in, plugged in her headphones, and closed her eyes. A few minutes later, she heard that voice again, louder this time, and filled with a fresh, sputtering rage. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me." Maya opened her eyes. Evelyn Reed was standing in the aisle, pointing a trembling, diamond-ringed finger directly at her. "This is not happening! This is not happening! Flight attendant!" Sarah Jenkins, the senior purser on Flight CO01, had been flying for 22 years. She had seen it all. She'd handled CEOs having panic attacks, rock stars demanding blue M&Ms, and diplomats who thought the rules of physics didn't apply to them. She was unflappable. "How can I help you, madam?" Sarah asked, her voice a calm, practiced balm. "You can help me," Evelyn snapped, "by removing her." Evelyn was pointing directly at Maya, who was now sitting up, headphones off, watching the scene with a look of weary resignation. Evelyn and Richard were ticketed for suites 3A and 3B, directly behind Maya. "I am not paying $24,000 for a round-trip ticket to sit in front of that." She was in the lounge, causing a disturbance. And now she's here? I think there has been a serious mistake. This girl is clearly in the wrong seat. Economy is in the back. Or perhaps she's one of those travel blogger types you give freebies to. The other first-class passengers, a quiet assembly of CEOs and old-money Europeans, were now peering out of their suites. The cabin, previously an oasis of calm, was now the stage for Evelyn's one-woman show. Sarah did not look at Maya. She kept her focus entirely on Evelyn, a technique she'd mastered for de-escalating entitlement. "Madam, all our first-class passengers have been ticketed for this cabin. I can assure you, there is no mistake." "Did you check her ticket?" Evelyn insisted. I want to see her boarding pass. Right now. For all we know, she snuck on. It happens. It's a serious security breach." Richard was tugging on his wife's sleeve, his face a blotchy red. "Evelyn, my God, you're making a scene. Sit down. The girl belongs here." "How do you know, Richard?" she spat back. "Because she's wearing fancy sneakers? They're probably fakes. I know what I'm talking about. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe. She's probably recording us all on her phone." Maya, who hadn't touched her phone, simply raised an eyebrow. She finally spoke, her voice low and clear, cutting through Evelyn's shrillness. "My ticket is for Suite 2A. I am in Suite 2A. Are you having trouble finding your own seat? Perhaps I can help you. 3 is the number after 2. A choked laugh came from the suite across the aisle. Evelyn's face went from angry to incandescent. "How dare you! You smug little—" "Madam!" Sarah stepped physically between them, a non-threatening but immovable barrier. "That is quite enough. Harassing another passenger is a violation of airline policy and international aviation law. I must ask you to take your seat. Now. Or I will have you removed from this aircraft." The word "removed" finally seemed to penetrate Evelyn's privilege. The idea of being marched back up the jet bridge in front of these people was, perhaps, the only thing that could silence her. She gave Sarah a look of pure venom. "Fine, I will sit. But this is not over. I will be filing the biggest complaint this tiny airline has ever seen. I will have your job, you. And I will find out who she is." She pointed one last time at Maya, then flounced into her suite, slamming the privacy screen shut with a dramatic whoomp. Richard, looking as if he wanted to be swallowed by the floor, muttered another, "So sorry," and disappeared into his own pod. Sarah let out a slow, controlled breath. She turned to Maya, her professional mask softening into one of genuine concern. "Ms. Clark, I am profoundly sorry you had to experience that. Can I get you anything? Pre-departure champagne? Water?" "I'm fine, Sarah," Maya said, her use of the purser's name a small, warm acknowledgement. "Thank you for handling that. I'd just like some sparkling water with lemon, please." "Of course." As Sarah walked to the galley, she felt a cold knot in her stomach. This wasn't a standard, difficult passenger. This was targeted, personal harassment, and she had a sinking feeling that Evelyn Reed was just getting started. The massive A380 pushed back from the gate, its 4 engines whining to life. As it taxied toward the runway, Maya looked out the window, watching the concrete blur into green. She put her headphones back on, turned up the volume on her playlist, and tried to lose herself in the music. But even through the noise-cancelling foam, she could feel the angry, restless energy from the suite behind her. She could feel Evelyn's hatred, a palpable thing, trying to drill its way through the bulkhead. The flight to London was 6 hours and 45 minutes. It was going to be a very, very long night. The first few hours of the flight passed with a tense, artificial calm. The cabin lights were dimmed to a soothing twilight blue, and the dinner service began. In Ascent Air's first class, this was a Michelin star affair: seared scallops, filet mignon, and a curated cheese board. Maya, an experienced traveller, had pre-ordered a simple vegetarian pasta. She wanted to eat quickly and sleep. Behind her, Evelyn was making a production of her meal. She sent her champagne back. "It's not cold enough. Are you chilling it at all, or just waving it near an ice bucket?" She complained about her scallops. "They're rubbery, utterly inedible. Take them away." Sarah, ever the professional, apologized and brought her a different main. Through it all, Evelyn kept her voice just loud enough to be heard by Maya, punctuating her complaints with pointed sighs. You pay for quality, and this is what you get. Standards are in the gutter. No wonder the clientele has gone downhill. Maya ate her pasta, watched a movie, and did her best to ignore it. After dinner, she closed her suite door, converted her seat into a fully flat bed, and put on her silk eye mask. She was tired, and the steady drone of the engines finally lulled her into a light sleep. 2 hours later, around 2:00 a.m., cabin time, she was jolted awake. Not by a sound, but by a sudden, jarring thump against the back of her suite. She sat up, heart pounding. Was it turbulence? No, the fastened seatbelt sign was off. Thump! It came again, a deliberate, angry kick to the bulkhead right behind her head. Maya sighed, rubbing her temples. She knew exactly who it was. She tried to ignore it. Thump, thump, thump. It was now a rhythmic, infuriating assault. Evelyn was kicking her seat. Maya pressed her call button. Sarah appeared moments later, her face etched with concern. "Miss Clark, is everything all right?" "The passenger in 3A, Maya said, keeping her voice low. "She's kicking my seat. Deliberately. I can't sleep." Sarah's eyes closed for a brief second. This was escalating. "I will handle this immediately. I am so sorry." She moved to Evelyn's suite, which was dark. She could hear the tinny sound of a movie playing. Sarah knocked softly on the privacy door. "Mrs. Reed?" The movie sound stopped. The door slid open an inch, and Evelyn peered out, her face greasy with expensive night cream. "What?" "I'm trying to sleep." "Mrs. Reed, I'm receiving complaints that you are kicking the seat in front of you. I must ask you to stop." Evelyn's eyes widened in mock innocence. "Kicking? Me? I would never. I think my leg must have twitched in my sleep. A spasm. You can't blame me for an involuntary muscle spasm, can you? Or maybe. Her voice turned syrupy sweet. It was turbulence. "Ma'am, the air is perfectly smooth," Sarah said, her patience wearing thin. "You are disturbing Miss Clark. Please refrain from any further spasms." "Or what?" Evelyn challenged. "You'll remove me? We're 30,000 feet over the Atlantic, you silly woman. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm trying to rest." She slammed the door shut. Sarah returned to the galley, furious. She wasn't alone. Another flight attendant, a junior crew member named Ben, was preparing the landing snacks. "That woman in 3A is a nightmare," Ben muttered. "She asked me if I was qualified to pour water." "She's harassing the young woman in 2A, Sarah said, pulling out the official flight log tablet. "And I'm not going to let it stand." She began to type. This was no longer a simple customer service issue. This was an official incident report. She detailed the events in the lounge, the confrontation at boarding, and now the deliberate, physical kicking. Passenger Evelyn Reed, seat 3A, exhibiting targeted and continuous harassment of passenger Maya Clark, seat 2A. Harassment appears to be racially motivated. Passenger has made false accusations, created a disturbance, and is now physically intimidating Ms. Clark by kicking her suite. Cabin environment is hostile, requesting ground crew and security to meet flight upon arrival. Just as she was about to submit the report, the call button for 3A lit up again. Sarah braced herself and walked back. "Yes, Mrs. Reed." "It's the noise," Evelyn whispered loudly, as if sharing a great secret. From her suite, the music. It's that thump, thump, thump music. It's vibrating my entire pod. It's giving me a migraine. I demand you make her stop. It's completely against the rules." Sarah paused. She looked at the seams of Maya's closed suite door. There was no sound, not a single vibration. "Mrs. Reed, I hear no music." "Are you deaf or just incompetent?" Evelyn hissed. "I hear it. It's probably why she can't hear you. She's got it cranked up. Go in there and turn it off." Ma'am, I am not permitted to enter a passenger's private suite without their permission, especially when they are sleeping, and I can assure you there is no audible music." "You're calling me a liar?" Evelyn's voice rose, waking the passenger in 4D. "I am telling you, I am being tortured in here. I demand you move me to another suite, away from her." "Ma'am, the first-class cabin is completely full. There are no other suites." "Then move her," Evelyn shrieked. "Move her to the back of the plane where she belongs. I don't care. I will not spend one more minute near that person." This was the breaking point. The mask of customer service fell from Sarah's face, replaced by the cold authority of the aircraft's senior purser. "Mrs. Reed, this behavior stops now. You have made false complaints. You have harassed a passenger. You have lied to the crew. You are endangering the safe and orderly conduct of this flight. This is your final and only warning. If I hear one more sound from you, if you press your call button one more time for anything other than a medical emergency, you will be in violation of federal law. Upon landing, you will be met by authorities. Am I understood?" Evelyn stared, speechless for the first time. She had finally pushed someone to the absolute limit. Sarah didn't wait for an answer. She turned, walked back to the galley, and pressed "Submit" on the incident report. The report, with all its damning keywords, harassment, racially motivated, endangering, authorities, was instantly flagged and beamed via satellite to the Ascend Air Global Operations Center. Evelyn, stewing in her suite, had no idea what she had just done. She thought she was fighting with a flight attendant. She had just declared war on the entire airline. 400 miles northeast of London, in a secure, bunker-like building near Milton Keynes, was the Ascend Air Global Operations Center, or the Hub. It was a cavernous, dimly lit room, dominated by a wall of screens displaying flight paths, weather patterns and aircraft data. It was 3:15 a.m. UK time. David Chen, the night operations duty manager, was sipping his third coffee of the shift when a red flag popped up on his terminal. It was an in-flight incident report, IFAR, from Flight 001, JFK to LHR. Red flags weren't common. They designated a Level 2 or higher incident, usually involving a security threat, a medical emergency, or severe passenger misconduct. David opened the file. He read Sarah's meticulous report. Passenger Evelyn Reed, targeted, racial, harassment, passenger Maya Clark, kicking suite, final warning issued, authorities requested. He sighed. Another entitled passenger making a flight miserable. He was about to follow standard procedure, confirm security would meet the flight, flag the passenger for a potential ban, when he saw the name of the victim. Passenger, Clark, Maya. David's blood ran cold. He quickly cross-referenced the manifest with the corporate VIP family directory. There, at the top of the list, Clark, Isabella, CIO and founder. Dependent, Clark, Maya, daughter. David felt the coffee turn to acid in his stomach. The woman harassing Flight Z01 wasn't just any passenger. She was harassing the owner's daughter. He grabbed his desk phone and hit the speed dial for the one man he was never, ever supposed to call at 3 a.m. unless the building was on fire. "James, it's David at the Hub. Wake up. We have a code Sierra." James Harrison, the head of UK operations, was awake instantly. Code Sierra was a designation they'd invented for a critical, brand-threatening event. "Go," James said, already out of bed and pulling on a shirt. "It's Flight 101, landing in 2 hours. We have a Level 2 harassment situation. A passenger, Evelyn Reed, has been, well, sir, she's been racially harassing another passenger all night." "And that's a code Sierra?" James snapped, confused. "It's bad, but it's not—" "Sir," David cut in, The passenger being harassed is Maya Clark." The line went silent for a full 10 seconds. James was processing the cataclysmic implications. Isabella Clark was not just a CEO. She was the airline. She had built Ascendair from 2 leased planes and a dream into the world's most exclusive carrier. She was famously, fiercely protective of 2 things: her staff and her daughter. And this Evelyn Reed had just attacked both. "Get me everything," James ordered, his voice now steel. "I want the purser's full, unedited log. I want the passenger service records for both parties. I want to know exactly what was said, and get me the cabin logs." The cabin logs, sir?" David stammered. Ascendair's A380s had a secret feature. For security and training, the audio in the galleys and common areas was recorded on a 24-hour loop. It was not for public use, but for moments just like this. "Yes, David. I want the audio from the galley. I want to hear the purser's report to the crew, and patch into the cabin feed. I want to see what's happening." "And, sir?" David asked trepidatiously. Do we call her?" James looked at his watch. 3:20 a.m. Calling Isabella Clark at this hour was a career-ending move. Not calling her, given the circumstances, was also a career-ending move. "No," James decided. "Let her sleep. She's meeting Maya at Heathrow anyway. She's due in the Windsor suite at 5 a.m. We will handle the arrival. I'm leaving now. Mobilize the full ground team. I want our corporate security, our guest relations specialists, and 2 officers from the Met's Aviation Police Unit at Gate 5. I want a private car on the tarmac, not at the terminal. And I want Mrs. Evelyn Reed's connecting flight. Where is she going?" David typed. "Connecting to Zurich on Swiss." "Cancel it," James said, "and put an immediate, permanent ban on Evelyn and Richard Reed from Ascendair. Lifetime. Flag them in the Star Alliance database as a high-risk, disruptive passenger. I want her to land and find her entire world has been grounded." "And Mr. Reed? The husband?" "He sat there and let it happen," James said coldly. "He's complicit. Ban him too. I'll be at the gate in 40 minutes. James hung up and grabbed his keys. As he raced down the M4 motorway toward Heathrow, he placed one more call. "Paul, it's James. I'm calling you as the head of legal for Ascendair. I need you to find out everything you can about a woman named Evelyn Reed, right now." On Flight 01, all was quiet. Evelyn Reed, blissfully ignorant, was finally, smugly, asleep. She was dreaming of the compensation she would demand, the apologies she would receive. Maya was also asleep, but her rest was fitful. She was dreaming of a dark room, with someone kicking the walls, trying to get in. The first pale grey light of a London dawn was breaking as Captain Miller initiated the A380's final descent. The gentle chime for the cabin crew to prepare for landing woke Maya. She sat up, stretching, feeling the familiar knot of travel fatigue in her shoulders. She looked out the window. The green fields of England, crisscrossed by ancient hedges, were a welcome sight. The tension of the night returned as she heard rustling from the suite behind her. Evelyn was awake. Maya signaled for a flight attendant, and Ben appeared. "Good morning," she smiled. "Could I just get an orange juice before we land?" "Absolutely, Miss Clark. Right away." As Ben handed her the juice, Evelyn's privacy door slid open. She had applied a fresh, thick layer of makeup, a mask of respectability. She saw Maya with her juice and sneered. "Enjoying the last of your free ride, are we? I hope it was worth it." Maya, completely done with this woman, didn't even look at her. "I'm sorry, I don't speak bitter old Harpy. It's a dying language." Evelyn gasped, clutching her pearls as if she'd been physically struck. "Well, I never. The disrespect. After I was the one who was harassed and tortured all night. Ma'am, Ben said, stepping in. Please return to your seat. We are on final approach. You! Evelyn snarled. You're just as bad as the other one. I'll be reporting you too. All of you will be fired by lunchtime. I am a very, very influential person. You'll see. She sat down and viciously buckled her seatbelt. She pulled out her phone, which she wasn't supposed to have on, and began texting. Richard, remind me to call Arthur at JP Morgan. I want to know who their corporate travel partner is. I'm going to personally bankrupt this airline. Just then, the captain's voice came over the PA, smooth and authoritative. Ladies and gentlemen, we are just a few minutes from landing at London Heathrow. We will be deplaning at Terminal 2, Gate 5. However, due to an unresolved passenger conduct issue, we must request that all passengers remain in their seats upon arrival at the gate. I repeat, all passengers must remain seated. We will be met by ground staff and customs officials who will board the aircraft first. Thank you. A murmur went through the cabin. This was highly unusual. Evelyn Reed, however, smiled. A slow, deeply satisfied smirk spread across her face. She turned and looked at Maya through the gap in the suites. Ground staff? Customs? She whispered theatrically. My. I wonder what that could be about. It sounds like someone is in a lot of trouble. They must have gotten my complaint. See? I told you. They're probably here to check your credentials. Richard just sank lower in his seat, covering his eyes with his hand. Evelyn, please, just stop. Maya's heart was pounding. Was she in trouble? Had this woman fabricated a story so wild that she was now the suspect? Had they believed her? The massive plane touched down on the runway with a gentle bump. It was one of the smoothest landings Maya had ever had. The jet taxied for what felt like an eternity, before finally nudging into the gate. The engines spooled down into silence. The fasten seatbelt sign remained on. Evelyn was practically vibrating with anticipation, craning her neck to be the first to see the action. The jet bridge docked with a heavy thud. The main door opened with a pneumatic hiss. The first people to board were not customs officials. It was two men in immaculate, dark blue Ascend Air executive suits, followed by two uniformed Metropolitan Police officers. The man in the lead, James Harrison, had a face like carved stone. He held a tablet in his hand. He walked past the galley, past Sarah, who nodded at him, stone-faced, and stopped directly at Maya's suite. Evelyn let out a small, triumphant, "Ah-ha-ha-ha!" But James Harrison didn't even glance at her. His eyes were on Maya, and his expression softened instantly into one of professional warmth and profound apology. "Ms. Maya Clark?" Maya, confused, nodded. "Yes. My name is James Harrison, head of UK operations. On behalf of Ascend Air, I want to be the first to welcome you to London and to offer our deepest, most sincere apologies for the conduct you had to endure on this flight. Your mother is waiting for you in the Windsor suite. We have a private car on the tarmac to take you there directly. If you're ready, Sarah will escort you off the plane right now. Your bags will be brought to you." The entire cabin was silent. Maya, stunned, just nodded again. "Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm ready." She stood up, grabbed her backpack, and was personally escorted by Sarah toward the door, past the police officers who nodded at her respectfully. Evelyn Reed was frozen. Her mind was a high-speed collision of conflicting data. Clark, Windsor suite, mother, private car. She watched Maya walk past, and in a daze, she finally put the pieces together. The airline, the name. "Wait," she breathed, her voice a horrified croak. "Clark, as in Isabella Clark?" Sarah paused just as she reached the door with Maya. She turned back to Evelyn, and for the first time that night, she smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Yes, Mrs. Reed," Sarah said, her voice carrying through the silent cabin, "as in Isabella Clarke, the founder, president, and CEO, the woman who owns this tiny airline." Evelyn's meticulously made-up face collapsed. The color drained from it, leaving a pasty grey mask of terror. "Oh no. 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 You don't understand. It was a misunderstanding." James Harrison finally turned his cold, calculating gaze on her. He stepped into the aisle and stood directly in front of her suite. "Mrs. Evelyn Reed? Mr. Richard Reed?" Evelyn could only nod, her hand fluttering at her throat. "My name is James Harrison," he repeated, his voice now devoid of all warmth. "We need you to come with us. Please gather your hand luggage. You will not be making your connecting flight." The walk from the gate to the terminal detention room was the longest walk of Evelyn Reed's life. It was a walk of pure, unadulterated shame. While Maya was being whisked away in a black Range Rover on the tarmac, Evelyn and Richard were being escorted by the 2 police officers, with James Harrison leading the way. They weren't in handcuffs. James had been specific about that. He didn't want a lawsuit for false arrest. He wanted a clean, corporate execution. The other first-class passengers, who had been allowed to deplane after Maya, watched the Reeds being led away. They averted their gaze, as if Evelyn's disgrace were contagious. "This is a mistake," Evelyn kept hissing, trying to maintain a shred of dignity. "A terrible mistake. I am a victim here. Richard, tell them." Richard, however, was a man broken. He knew corporate power when he saw it. He knew the look in James Harrison's eyes. It was the look of a man who held all the cards, and he was about to burn the deck. "Quiet, Evelyn," Richard mumbled, his face ashen. "Just be quiet." They were not taken to the public customs hall. They were led down a sterile white corridor to a small, windowless room marked Aviation Police, Interview Room. The officers had them sit. "Mrs. Reed, Mr. Reed," James Harrison began, standing over them while a female officer stood by the door. "We have a detailed log from the senior purser of this flight. It details a 6-hour campaign of targeted, racist harassment against Ms. Maya Clarke. It details your false claims against the crew, your deliberate disturbance of the cabin, your violation of safety protocols, and your blatant lies to the captain's staff." "Lies," Evelyn sputtered. That girl was rude to me. She had her music on. She... "We have the audio logs from the galley, Mrs. Reed," James cut in. "We have the purser's real-time reports. We have 4 separate witness statements from other passengers. And we have your own text messages, which you sent while on final approach, threatening to bankrupt this airline." Evelyn looked at her phone, horrified. How could they know? "You are hereby banned from Ascend Air. For life," James stated flatly. "Your names have been placed on the International Air Transport Association's Disruptive Passenger Registry, which is shared with all our partner airlines. You will find it very, very difficult to fly on any reputable carrier from this day forward. Your connecting flight to Zurich has been cancelled. Your return tickets are void." You can't do that," Evelyn shrieked. "We have a summit. My husband has to be in Zurich. This is our right." "It is a privilege to fly, Mrs. Reed, not a right," James said. "One you have abused. Furthermore, your checked luggage, all 4 pieces of it, will be subject to a full security and customs inspection. It will be released to you, eventually. Perhaps in 7 to 10 business days, pending the results of the inspection." 10 days? Evelyn looked faint. Her entire wardrobe was in those bags. This is where Ascend Air's involvement ends, James continued. We are not pressing criminal charges at this time. A tiny spark of hope lit Evelyn's eyes. Instead, James said, we are turning over our entire file. The logs, the witness statements, the audio, to the UK Border Force and the Metropolitan Police. They will determine if your actions constitute a violation of the UK's Public Order Act, specifically the clauses on racially aggravated harassment. You are being detained for questioning. What happens next is up to them. James placed his tablet on the table, slid it toward the police officer, and nodded. Good day, Mrs. Reed. Mr. Reed. He turned and walked out, closing the door behind him, leaving them alone with the two officers. No, wait! Evelyn screamed, lunging for the door. Come back! You don't understand. I know people. I know. Arthur. At J.P. Morgan. The police officer just raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, I suggest you sit down, and I strongly suggest you contact a solicitor. Now we're going to start from the beginning. Tell us what happened in the lounge at JFK. Evelyn Reed finally understood. She wasn't just in trouble. She was erased. In the hushed, opulent sanctuary of the Heathrow Windsor suite, Maya was sipping tea, her sketchbook open on her lap. She was finally calm. Across from her sat her mother, Isabella Clark. Isabella was a striking woman. She commanded rooms not with volume, but with an intense, gravitational presence. She was listening intently as Maya recounted the story, not as a victim, but as a frustrated observer. And then she started kicking the seat, Mum. Kicking it. It was just so childish. Isabella's face was unreadable. When Maya finished, she just nodded slowly. Thank you for telling me, Isabella said, her voice soft. James is handling the Reeds. You won't ever be bothered by them again. Good, Maya sighed. She was awful, and she was horrible to that flight attendant, Sarah. She deserves a bonus, Mum. She was amazing. She will get one, Isabella promised. Sarah Jenkins. I've already seen her report. She's a credit to this company. Isabella looked at her daughter, her gaze softening. I'm so sorry this happened, baby. You shouldn't have to deal with that. I know, Mum. It's fine, Maya said, trying to brush it off. It was the armor she'd had to build. No, Isabella said, her voice hardening just a fraction. It's not fine. It's not fine at all. She picked up her phone. James Harrison had already forwarded her the full background check on Evelyn Reed. Reed, Evelyn, Senior Partner, McKinsey & Company. Reed, Richard, Managing Director, J.P. Morgan Chase. Isabella smiled. It was the same cold, sharp smile Sarah had given Evelyn. McKinsey, she said to herself. She found the number she was looking for in her private contacts. It was the direct line for the global managing partner of McKinsey & Company. They had met at Davos last year. She dialed. Bob, Isabella Clark. I know it's early. I'm afraid I have some bad news. For the next 10 minutes, Isabella calmly, precisely, and without a single note of emotion, laid out the events of Flight 001. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She simply stated, Your senior partner, Bob, spent 6 hours racially harassing my daughter. When she wasn't harassing my daughter, she was abusing my flight crew to the point where the captain had to call in the police. There was panicked sputtering on the other end of the line. No, Bob, I'm not interested in an apology from her. I'm calling you because McKinsey has a $70 million global travel account with Ascend Air, an account that is now under full and immediate review. More sputtering. Panicked sputtering. Yes, I have the logs. Yes, I have the witness statements. And yes, I have the audio. It's quite vivid. I'll have my legal team forward the file. I expect to hear from you by end of business today with a Resolution. She hung up. She then made a second call, this one to the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. Arthur? Isabella. Wonderful to hear your voice. Listen, I'm calling about a small, internal matter. It concerns your managing director, Richard Reed. Yes, his wife was on my flight last night. I think you need to see a file I'm sending over. It seems Mr. Reed sat by, in complete silence, while his wife committed what the Met Police are currently investigating as a racially aggravated public offence. As your bank is the primary underwriter for our new fleet expansion, I thought you'd want to be aware of the character of the men representing your brand. She hung up. Maya looked at her, wide-eyed. Mum, that was intense. Isabella sipped her tea. That, Maya, is what you call karma. It's not just about what happens to you. It's about ensuring that people who wield their privilege like a weapon learn that it can and will be turned against them. Now, let's get you to the gallery. Your show is waiting. Evelyn and Richard Reed were released from the Heathrow Detention Centre 8 hours later. The small, windowless room had smelled of bleach and stale coffee. They hadn't spoken, the silence between them thick and suffocating. A uniformed officer handed them their passports and phones in a large manila envelope, his expression one of pure, bureaucratic boredom. You're free to go, he said. For now. Your solicitor will be in touch regarding the formal charges. I'd advise you not to leave the country, but seeing as your passports are flagged, you won't get far. They stumbled out into the overwhelming noise and light of the Terminal 2 departures hall. They were no longer first-class passengers. They were just two more exhausted, rumpled people in a sea of travellers. They found a row of hard plastic seats next to a sparrow. The smell of cheap pizza made Evelyn want to be sick. Then, the phones, reconnected to the network, began to detonate. Richard's phone buzzed first, a single ominous text from his boss, Arthur, the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. The text read, "My office. As soon as you land in New York, we have a problem." Richard's face, already ashen, turned the colour of wet cement. "Oh God," he whispered. But Evelyn's phone was a different category of disaster. It was a cascade, an electronic avalanche, 42 missed calls from her office, 11 voicemails, 73 unread text messages. She stared at it, her hands trembling. "What is this? They're worried," she stammered, a pathetic thread of hope in her voice. "They're probably wondering where I am." "Play the voicemail, Evelyn," Richard said, his voice flat. She tapped the most recent one. It was from Bob, the global managing partner of McKinsey. His voice wasn't panicked. It wasn't angry. It was a polar ice cap. It was the sound of pure, cold, corporate finality. "Evelyn," the voice began, I'm at a loss for words. I've been on the phone for the last 4 hours with Ascend Air's CEO and their entire legal department. I've seen the purser's log. I've seen the witness statements. God, Evelyn, I have heard the audio of your interactions with the crew. What in the name of God were you thinking? Evelyn let out a small, strangled gasp. Audio. This isn't a client dispute. This is a moral and legal catastrophe. You have single-handedly jeopardized our $70 million global travel account and exposed this firm to a public relations nightmare that could cost us 10 times that. You have become a liability. We are invoking the moral turpitude and conduct detrimental clauses in your partnership agreement. Your partnership at McKinsey & Company is terminated, effective immediately. Your access to all firm systems has been revoked. Do not come to the office. Do not contact any clients. Security is packing your office as we speak. We'll courier your personal effects. Goodbye. The phone slipped from Evelyn's hand and clattered to the linoleum floor. Terminated. Not suspended. Not on leave. Terminated. Her career, her multi-million-dollar salary, her identity. Gone. Wiped out by a single 6-hour flight. She looked at Richard, expecting... what? Support? Comfort? Richard, however, was looking at her with a kind of dead, cold fury she had never seen. "You," he seethed, his voice a low hiss. "You did this. You, with your arrogance, with your mouth. You couldn't just sit down and be quiet. You had to poke the bear. You had to make a scene. You just had to be Evelyn Reed." "How dare you!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You sat there. You let her speak to me. You said nothing." "What was I supposed to say?" Richard shot back, his own desperation making him cruel. "You were on a rampage. I'm on administrative leave, Evelyn. Leave. Do you know what that means? It means I'm finished. Arthur is just setting up the guillotine. I'm ruined. We're ruined. All for what? Because you didn't like the look of a girl in a hoodie." The fight went out of Evelyn. She just sat there, amid the noise and the travellers and the smell of cheap food, and stared into the void. The days that followed were a blur of humiliation. They were forced to book seats on a budget carrier, in coach, for a flight back to New York. The Met Police had, in fact, charged them. Their high-priced London solicitors advised them to plead guilty to a public order offence, pay a massive fine, and accept a 5-year ban from entering the United Kingdom to avoid a public, racially aggravated harassment trial. Richard's leave became a managed exit. He was quietly forced into early retirement, given a small fraction of his expected severance, and thanked for his service. His career was over. The social fallout was just as swift. The invitations stopped. The friends from the club, the Hamptons, the galas, they suddenly didn't answer their phones. When Evelyn finally got her friend Barbara on the line, the response was breezy and lethal. "Oh, Evelyn, darling, I'm just so swamped. Let me call you right back. Ages to catch up." The call never came. Within 6 months, they sold the Manhattan apartment to pay the UK fines, the astronomical legal fees, and to cover their now non-existent income. They bought a small, forgettable condo in a sprawling, anonymous, gated community in Boca Raton. Their luggage from Flight 001 arrived, as promised, 10 days late, the Louis Vuitton case irreparably scarred by a deep gash. 1 year passed, a cold, clear November night in Chelsea, New York, a packed art gallery. The air buzzed with energy, the clinking of champagne flutes, and the murmur of impressed, wealthy patrons. This was Maya Clarke's first solo exhibition. It was a triumph. The show, titled Ascension, featured massive, abstract canvases of colour and motion, all inspired by the view from 30,000 feet. Critics were calling her the new voice of her generation. Maya, looking stunning in a sapphire blue dress, was laughing, talking to a curator from the Tate Modern. In the corner, near the catering bar, a woman was meticulously polishing glasses. She was in her late 50s, but looked closer to 70. She was thin, almost gaunt, and her hair, no longer a proud blonde helmet, was a dull, lifeless grey, pulled back in a severe, mandated hairnet. She wore the stiff, black, polyester uniform of the catering company. Her feet ached. It was the only job she could get. Her savings, once vast, were now hemorrhaging. Richard spent his days at the community golf course, and they barely spoke. Evelyn Reed, former senior partner, was now serving canapés. She picked up a heavy tray of champagne flutes, her shoulders aching. As she turned to enter the main gallery, she heard a laugh. A bright, clear, effortless laugh that cut through the polite din. Evelyn froze. She knew that laugh. She looked up and her blood turned to ice. Across the room, bathed in the warm glow of a spotlight, was Maya Clark. She wasn't the girl in the hoodie. She was a woman, radiant, confident, and surrounded by people who adored her. Their eyes met. Across the crowded, glittering room, Maya's gaze landed on the cater waiter. The recognition was instant. A small, almost imperceptible flicker in her eyes. Evelyn stopped breathing. The tray in her hands began to tremble violently. A flute on the edge rattled, the champagne sloshing. She was trapped, pinned by that gaze, her face burning with a hot, acidic, primal shame. This was her hell. To be invisible, a servant, watching the girl she tried to destroy become the center of a universe she was no longer allowed to inhabit. She expected a smile of triumph, a sneer, something. Maya gave her nothing. After a beat of 2 seconds, Maya simply turned away. She turned back to the museum curator, took a sip of her own champagne, and continued her conversation, dismissing Evelyn from her reality as easily as one would swat a fly. The dismissal was total. It wasn't hatred. It was indifference. It was a statement clearer than any words. You are not, and have never been, relevant. That look broke the last remaining piece of Evelyn Reed. She couldn't breathe. She backed away, stumbling, turning so fast she nearly dropped the entire tray. She didn't run. She scurried, a creature of the shadows, pushing through the swinging, staff-only door into the chaos of the kitchen. She leaned against a cold, stainless steel counter, gasping for air, the sound of clattering dishes and the distant, beautiful, happy laughter of Maya Clark ringing in her ears. And that's what happens when deep-seated prejudice and blinding entitlement crash into a reality they never saw coming. Evelyn Reed thought her status made her untouchable. She thought she could abuse a young woman and a hard-working flight crew with zero consequences. But she didn't just pick on a passenger. She picked on the one person who could hold up a mirror to her rotten core and make the entire world see it. She didn't just lose her flight. She lost her career, her reputation, and her entire life, all because she couldn't stand to see a young, talented black woman sitting where she didn't belong. What do you think? Was this the perfect karma, or should she have faced even more? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories where the bully gets exactly what they deserve, do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It tells YouTube you want to see more content just like this. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and make sure to ring that notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a single story of justice being served. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.